So first of all, I have my Art Krispies here.
I love that.
I just want to talk to you about all things Terrifier. When you took on this role, did you have any idea that you were going to be entering such a wild universe?
Definitely not. It was in 2019 that I actually had my final audition. I think only a couple days ago was the 5-year anniversary of like my audition. And I hadn't watched any of the films. I had my first audition and I think it was a self-tape and it was due really quickly and I didn't have time to watch the first one, and then that kept happening with every callback. So I was like, okay, I mean, I'm doing something right. They must like what I'm doing, so I'll just try not to watch it because I thought maybe if I had, it would influence my decision making, and I didn't want to do that. So I met Damian in person, and he was such a nice guy. And I don't know if I had watched the first film, if I would have felt safe to go to an audition in person, honestly. So it was so funny to see how Damian is the complete opposite of his artwork. So yeah, I had no idea what I was entering until I think that day that I found out I booked the part and I found out the day of my audition, which, never happens. I was like, all right, let me watch this film. And then I came home, I watched it with my partner and we were like, what is this? And, but we liked the storytelling, obviously. I love horror films. I didn't really grow up watching gory horror films, but I definitely developed an appreciation being on set as they were using their low budget resources to make these big moments happen. I was so impressed and floored with what they were able to achieve with so little. So I have a deep appreciation for the franchise, gory horror films now, and especially Damian.
I think one thing that is so interesting about this franchise is, from the start, it was such a low budget project. And then now, we're in Spirit Halloween. It's crazy to me, and I think that's part of the intrigue too of the storytelling, because it's so amazing to be able to root for indie projects like this, and the fans are loving it. So, and I heard that you just started acting 2 years before when you booked it.
Yeah, actually, I must have started 2017 and I booked it in 2019. Yeah, I was very lucky early in my career to be able to work as quickly as I did, and as often as I did, and I've been lucky ever since, really. I mean, of course, it comes with hard work, but I think this just came at the right time in my career, this opportunity. Even Damian, because I can't really remember, this would probably be a Damian question, but he tried to do the storyline similar to Terrifier 2 a decade prior, and it all fell through. He was 90% done filming it, and it just fell apart. So and I wasn't acting at that point, and they had a different actor and everything. So this really it was such a serendipitous thing that it came when I had first started acting. I had already been a trained actor at this point, trained for 2 years, and this just worked out. So I, again, was very lucky.
How did you approach the role, especially knowing that it already kind of had, a mini cult following? How did you start to kind of develop the character?
Yeah, you know what? I really tried not to focus on the fact that there was a cult following. I think it might have psyched me out a bit too much, even though Damian and Dave, because we all went out to dinner after I booked the role. It was so nice. They were just welcoming me to the franchise family. They were just like, this is going to be big. Terrifier 2 is going to be big. You're going to be the Batman to Art's Joker. And I was just like, guys, do not tell me this. I don't need to know it. I just want to focus on the work. I want to focus on what we're about to create. And Damian was very collaborative with me. He knows about my process. I have journals and a binder with the script with it's filled with notes, and I also like to create playlists for my characters, especially because I was filming a Hallmark Christmas movie the same time that I was filming Terrifier 2, and it's hard to switch between those two tones, and I was this happy Christmas movie to this deranged killer clown film. So I had my playlist for that, and Damian actually helped. Well, he pretty much created the playlist for Sienna, which I still use. Yeah, so the first time I had extensive note-taking, extensive bio. I would run everything by Damian. He gave me wonderful homework, which of course I asked him for. I was like, which final girls do you think Sienna's like? And he was like, oh, I think she's a bit of Ripley, a bit of Laurie, a bit of Sydney, and watch these films. So it was the best homework. I got to watch these horror movies that I grew up loving, and I would write down characteristics that I thought would align with Sienna. And so I would kind of like pick and choose characteristics from my favorite final girls and try to infuse them into Sienna. And I, of course, would run it by Damian, and he would either say, yeah, go for it, or I don't know if I agree. So it was a really wonderfully fun collaborative experience.
Is there a song or an artist that you feel kind of represents Sienna as a character? I'd love to hear that.
Oh my God. I mean, aside from like Equalizer, which of course is within the film and she's building her like armor, her Halloween costume, Fleetwood Mac is always like infused with Sienna. I think it's Damian's favorite band of all time. And there's so many aspects of Damian and Sienna and his sisters in Sienna. But there's another one. It's actually a remake of a song or a cover of a song called or I think it's just I'm on Fire by the Chromatics. But I don't think they're the original. Oh gosh, I can't even imagine. I can't even remember at this point who the original band is who sings that song. But whenever I hear it, it makes me think of Sienna because there's something about her that's always attributed to fire. Like her bedroom catching on fire, even in the new trailer, we see that she's standing in front of flames. So there's something about fire and Sienna that go hand in hand, for me at least. So yeah.
Every time I think of her character, I just think of that scene where she's getting ready with the costume, and there's so much strong imagery. And I know you mentioned, final girls. Is there a final girl that you love that's your favorite?
Oh gosh, I couldn't.
It's so hard, I know.
So hard because especially around July, I really start like July 5th, I really start prepping for Halloween and I start watching all of my favorite horror films. And I just recently rewatched Rec, which is a Spanish language, like Barcelona based zombie found footage horror film. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. And I really love that final girl in the film. Like she's like badass and smart and really outspoken and strong. But I love all of the iconic final girls like Nancy, Sydney, Lori, even like the Halloween remakes, like the Rob Zombie remakes. I love their representation of final girls. So I don't know if I have a favorite, but I do have one that is very special to me because I feel like she doesn't get enough love and attention, maybe more so now. And it's Fede Alvarez's remake, or I don't know if it's a sequel or remake of Evil Dead in 2013, Mia Allen, and she plays both a zombie deadite and a final girl. So she gets to be the baddie and the goodie. And that's why I love her. And her range is incredible. And I love Fede Alvarez. And I still haven't seen the new Alien movie, but I really want to. And I just love those filmmakers. So I think that's why she's very close to my heart. And final boys, like Ash, I guess you can call him a final boy or a final guy in the original Evil Dead. And even my brother in the film, we're like a final sibling duo in Terrifier 2. And I consider him a wonderful final boy. And I feel like final boys need more love too.
Oh, totally. And I love that. Hopefully I think he's confirmed in the next one. That's public knowledge. Okay. Yeah. So you guys are fully wrapped. When did you finish filming?
Oh gosh. I remember we were filming during Easter. Like I was in a hotel room for Easter. And I actually was working on a self-tape audition with my acting coach for Easter. I was like so thankful that he like had time. I don't think he celebrates Easter anyway, but he's Jewish, so I don't think he cared that much. But I was like, thank you for taking this holiday to do an audition with me. Yeah, so I think Easter was April of this year. I don't, because they always fall different. Yeah.
I think it was April.
Yeah, so I think it was like mid-April that we finished. I can't even remember now. It feels like forever ago. Maybe I blocked out the trauma because it's definitely very hard to film these movies.
I was actually going to ask you, we know it's such a bloody time, and is it, intense working on these films? What's it like behind the scenes? Is it fun? Do you guys laugh? Is there any times that you kind of are able to break the seriousness of, a killer clown?
Yeah, and luckily none of the actors on set are like rigid method actors. They're not rigid method actors. So luckily once we call cut, like we're just all ourselves, we're all just present in the moment. And I really am fortunate that obviously I know these people from Terrifier 2, and we've all remained friends, and we get to hang out in between and talk. So we really do have a wonderful time, and we're constantly cracking jokes because we're all very much like family. But when we are filming, it's very intense. Like my body aches. I took so much ibuprofen because I do most of my own stunts. So I took so much ibuprofen during this process. And like just from being scared. It's funny because we had an intimacy coordinator, Maria. She was phenomenal. And like I was talking to her and I was sweating after a scene, and I was like, Maria, I smell so bad, like because I was sweating and disgusting. And she was like, your body doesn't know the difference. Like you're putting yourself through this stress and this trauma, and you think you can just turn it off. Because I do try to turn it off after and just be present with the people around me, because I don't want to put them through whatever headspace I was just in. But my body doesn't know. So my body's sweating. It's like, I feel like I smell terrible when I'm filming these movies. So I would love to do like a rom-com next, just because like I feel like my body needs a break from all this stress I'm putting it through.
Something lighter, something lighter. I know that you can't really share much about it, but the next film, I'm really, really, really excited though to see what happens, with your character and your brother. And I mean, I've heard, I don't know if you can say or not, I've heard that there might be a Terrifier 4. Of course, we don't know who's going to be in that and what, it's going to be, but are you able to say if there is going to be a fourth? I think I heard
there is
at a con.
There are plans. Okay. I think Damian is fully invested in a 4. I don't know if at this point he's trying to see fan reception. I still think he's planning on wrapping up the story in 4. But as far as I know, there should be a 4. Damian plans on a 4. Whether or not they're going to depend that on how Terrifier 3 performs, I'm not entirely sure. But I think there probably will be a 4.
Cool. Well, I have to tell you, the reception on TikTok when the second movie came out, it was my entire feed was like Terrifier 2. And it's so incredible again, because, you hear about what they made the first one on. And I'm such a champion of independent art and it getting the attention it deserves. And horror is just like getting so big. So I'm so stoked for all of you. I really like genuinely. And I'm like, I want to ask you so bad. Does she make it? Obviously, I know you cannot answer that, so I'm not going to ask that. But I am dying to know what happens. To flip from that, can you tell us a little bit about what it's like working with Damian? Because I heard he's so incredibly hands-on. He's like doing the makeup too and directing, and like, what does he not do? I guess he's just not in front of the camera.
Yeah, I mean, he actually technically was in front of the camera for Terrifier 2, because Sienna has a poster in her room, and it's right over where she's doing her armor, and it's a poster of what seemingly looks like a band called Queen Phoenix, and it's half of a woman's face with like makeup and really electric looking makeup, and that's Damian with a gender swap app. Like, that's just him.
Oh, wow.
Producers was making a joke that Damian was made a very attractive woman, and we just kind of ran with it. And to his credit, he does make a very attractive woman if he was ever to gender swap for whatever reason. But yeah, so he is technically in front of the camera. But working with him behind the camera were 2 different experiences for Terrifier 2 and Terrifier 3. For Terrifier 2, because we were such a skeleton crew, he did so much. He was the head of many departments. Again, makeup, special effects. Of course, he was the writer, director, editor. He's editing Terrifier 3 as we speak. Like, he'll text me and he's doing like audio right now in Mexico for it. But for Terrifier 3, I really enjoyed, I mean, of course enjoyed Terrifier 2, but I really enjoyed my experience with Damian because we had a much larger budget. We had much more hands on deck. So he would only really do touch-ups for makeup. I think only touch-ups. And of course, he was still hands-on. He was very much like, not enough blood and would throw more blood. But he got to focus on being a director this time, which was nice because he was pulled, again, every which way in Terrifier 2. But Terrifier 3, there was a bit more like intimacy between him and the actors, and that was really nice. And it was just nice to see him focus on the area that he really wants to focus on, and that's being just a creative. And he's extremely collaborative, like I'd mentioned, for takes. He'll usually, I mean, it does vary, but he'll have you do the take that he wants, that you have decided on, that he'll give you some notes, and then he'll let you just try something completely different. But I like to have extensive conversations with him just to make sure we're on the same page, sometimes right before we are about to jump into the scene. But he always listens to all of his teammates out, and he's, again, very collaborative. So we're all very fortunate.
That's amazing. I heard that you did a lot of improv in the second filming of the second movie. Was that kind of a similar scenario in the third?
Yeah, of course. He lets us improv whenever we like. And it's always interesting when you see that he keeps the improvisation in. Like there was a scene in Terrifier 2 when, and of course I don't know what he kept in yet. I haven't seen the final cut, but there's a scene where Sienna's talking to her mom about her brother. And I forget what the original line is, but she's talking about her brother, and I forgot the line as we were just as we were in the scene, but I understood the tone. So she says, like, Barb says to Sienna, like, "Oh, what about your brother?" And I just say something because I couldn't remember the line, like, "Oh, he's." Because I couldn't remember the line, and he kept it in because it still was the same vein of what he was going for, and it was so funny to see because I'm like, I just forgot the line. Why did you keep that in? So it is fun when he keeps improvisation in. And again, with Dave, like, I mean, technically this isn't improv, but of course, I think everybody knows the glasses moment in the costume shop scene. He is blowing on like one of those party blowers. I don't really know what they're called. And he blows it so hard it falls out of his mouth, and he tries to catch it and it's just bouncing everywhere. It's hilarious. And he kept it in because it is hilarious. But he lets us all improv, and he encourages it, and he keeps it in, which is really rewarding when we get to see that.
That's amazing. And I think those moments really do make it, special, and then also can cut some of the, I guess, seriousness, if you will. I think that's what makes art kind of so likable, versus like a Michael Myers is he has a little bit of personality to him, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So you have a very diverse background in martial arts. You've been doing it for, is it 19 years, 20 years?
Over 20 by now, yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. And you also, I've heard, have lots of, you speak different languages too?
Yeah, the only other, so I'm bilingual technically, so fluently only English and Italian. I probably eventually try to pick up Spanish because it's so similar to Italian, but it's still, I can understand some things just because of the similarities, but I wouldn't try to speak it. I think I would make a fool of myself.
So how has, the martial arts kind of helped with performing your own stunts and your choreography? Did that also kind of help you get this role, I guess, because that's a special skill, right?
I suppose it is. I don't think Damian knew about, maybe he had when he had cast me. I'm not sure. That's probably a Damian question. I don't know if he was familiar, because I think there's a misconception that I started as a stunt performer, which is untrue. I started as an actor who had martial arts experience, and I always tried to encourage the artists I worked with, like, hey, I can do my own stunts, and I prefer to, so I can really feel what the character's feeling, and that it's just very beneficial as an actor to have that character within your body in every way possible. But yeah, I still train martial arts, and I was actually speaking to a friend of mine who trains martial arts, and he was saying that he was always interested in acting, and I was encouraging him to get into it because I will encourage anybody to create, because I love this medium so much. And it was interesting how we both kind of came to the conclusion that acting and martial arts go hand in hand so well. There's so much imagination that goes into martial arts, especially when you're performing a sequence or a pattern or a form. It's really just a series of movements that the performer will do, and it's like you're fighting an invisible opponent. And that you have to display that you are fighting someone, and that takes imagination. And I really do believe, and I started with Taekwondo, and we have something called tenets of Taekwondo, and they were like, I forget how many there are, but two that always stuck with me were perseverance and indomitable spirit. And of course, martial arts takes a lot of perseverance and indomitable spirit, but so does this career, especially especially like doing a horror film, because it's so taxing on your body, on your mind. And if you don't have that perseverance, you'll just fall apart on set because you have to do the same thing over and over again. And I really do think that martial arts prepared me physically and of course mentally for this genre and this career, because this career is of course taxing in many other ways, but especially when you're telling stories that are this horrific. So it's prepared me in more ways than one, and I'm very grateful for my martial arts experience, both in the past and present. So yeah.
That's amazing. I actually did Kung Fu when I was younger. Yeah. So I totally know what you mean from like a discipline standpoint. And I feel like it's different than what people actually think it is. And well, I wanted to be in Charlie's Angels. So yes.
I love that.
Yes.
I love that so
Yes.
much. I love that so much. I wanted to be a Power Ranger, so I think that's why I took it up. So I love that.
I love that for us. Now
Yeah.
I want to talk about you being labeled a scream queen. You are, and which I think is kind of one of the highest honors in horror. And how do you feel about that?
It is. It's interesting. When people call me that, I do often wonder if I deserve that title, because I feel like I haven't been really doing it for that long. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I, of course, am so grateful when people refer to me as, you know, these wonderful titles like Final Girl, Scream Queen, whatever. So I think I'm very humbled by it. And there is always this imposter syndrome, like, have I done enough? Do I deserve this? Am I whatever? But the fact that people resonate, or they feel that Sienna maybe resonates with them is so incredible. It's the reason why I started acting, so that people could feel less alone or maybe represented. So that's enough for me. But the fact that they give me these wonderful titles is just the cherry on top. Do I think I deserve it? I'm not entirely sure, but I will continue to work hard so people think I deserve it.
That's amazing. Well, I know that we're all rooting for her in the next movie. So, you know, fingers crossed. I know that you're a horror fan.
Yes.
Can you tell me, do you have a favorite horror movie? And then what I like to call a comfort horror movie, which is one that you can just put on, like not necessarily have to be paying attention to, but it's just, I'm just going to put it on in the background, you know the vibe?
Absolutely. I would say my comfort horror film is definitely the original Halloween, just because I grew up watching it. It was always on the TV, especially around my favorite holiday, which is Halloween, when I would get ready to go trick-or-treating. And it is a comfort to me. I love seeing Laurie Strode. Like I love seeing Jamie Lee and all the other, especially female characters in the original and the entire franchise. And just the atmosphere is so autumny, and I love autumn too. So it's definitely a comfort film for me.
That's a good one.
I mean, you can't go wrong. I would often say that that's my favorite horror film, but I feel like that changes depending on my mood. There's so many horror films I love. I had mentioned Evil Dead. I love that franchise. Gosh, I will say this, and I feel like I'll get a lot of people judging me for this. I saw the original Black Christmas for the very first time, like a month ago. For the very first time, and that's like a sin. I don't know why, especially because there's so many similarities in shots between Black Christmas and Terrifier 3. So, and I didn't know that, obviously. So I was just like, I want to see this movie, and my God, it was so good. I cannot believe, even though it was it came out 50 years ago or something like that. It was
I don't think I've seen it. I don't think I've seen it either. So I'm like,
I recommend it. I think. Okay. I think it's easy for people that, you know, young people who they're aware of these like older horror films, and they might think, oh, it's probably not as scary. It's probably, you know, because we are continually pushing the envelope as time goes by. So we think that only modern horror films are scary, but that's not the case. And Black Christmas, it was so uneasy, and the acting, of course, was wonderful. There's some wonderful icons in that movie, but the storytelling was so good. And the slasher Billy, the voice acting for that, and I think that was done, if I remember correctly, by like 3 different people, the director being one of them, was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. I was surprised to find out the director did some of the voice acting for that. I was like, are you serious? Because that was horrifying. Like just the things he was saying on the phone. And I was blown away. So if you can watch that soon, I highly recommend it. Or if you want to wait for that fun in between time between Halloween and the holidays, like that's fine too. But I recommend watching it.
Oh, I started watching horror again in August. I mean, I'm always kind of watching it. Scream is actually my comfort horror movie. It's probably my favorite movie in general too, because I just love Wes Craven. What an incredible filmmaker.
Absolutely.
So that's why I'm like, I'm like, Halloween's a really good one because that's definitely a comfort vibe too. Looking back at your career so far, is there a moment for you that you are most proud of? I know that's kind of hard.
Yeah, because oh my God, that is very hard. That I'm most proud of. I could stay here all day trying to rack my brain. So I'll try to just say the first thing that comes to mind. And I'd say the moment I'm most proud of, because it's a great question, would be when I first started, because I had a really great like white collar job. I was selling high-end eyewear. I was an optician in the city and I was making really good money. And I decided that I needed to be an actor because I was really close to my grandmother and she always wanted to be a dancer and an actor. And she unfortunately was on her deathbed. And I just remember being with her and thinking to myself, like, she didn't even get a chance to try. She didn't even attempt to try. So I felt like I needed to try for her. And so like shortly after her passing, I quit my job. I like took my first acting classes the same night I quit my job, which is so stupid, but I did it. And luckily that was at a casting office. They held classes there and they got to know me. And even before I had an agent, they would bring me in for auditions. And that's how I got my first job, I think. And I'm really grateful to myself for just taking that leap, even though it was a really irresponsible one. And I don't recommend people do it the same way I did it. I'm proud of the fact that I believed in myself and cared enough about my relationship with my grandmother to try. So that's probably the most significant moment.
Well, I just got goosebumps. That is the dream, and I respect it so incredibly. Is there any films or anything outside of Terrifier that maybe you can share?
I've been auditioning like crazy, and I've told my reps that like I really want to try to do something more comedic. So most of my auditions have been in that vein, and I do get a lot of offers for horror. I've found that as much as I love horror, a lot of those roles are very similar to Sienna. And I'm like, you know what? I need something different. I need to feed my creative love in a different way. So who knows? I might do comedy next. I'm hoping. I would still do horror just as long as the story was different from what I've already done. And I have been writing a coming of age comedy with my best friend about our time in Europe when we were studying abroad and just the shenanigans we got into. And I think we're really going to try to make this the next thing that I focus on, because I love shows like 10/15 and Broad City and Fleabag. They're some of my favorite shows of all time. And there's just these stories of messy, imperfect, hilarious women. So I'm hoping to do that next.
Well, I can't wait to see what you do outside of horror. I think that's amazing that, and you have such a great energy too. So I'm like, you can totally play like comedy vibes or horror vibes. So I'm stoked for you. The last question I have for you, and I know you're probably going to be like, Kristen, I can't say anything really, but is there anything you can tease about Terrifier 3? I feel like it's going to be kind of the realm of Black Christmas. We're going to get like our horror fix in October and December. So that's...
Yeah, I'm hoping it'll be so cool if they did a re-release in theaters for the holidays, or even if it's out on digital by the holidays. That would be so great. I will say that the kills are bigger. It's a lot gorier. I love seeing I really think some of the new characters you'll meet are really interesting and fun. Some of Sienna's family members, I'm really excited for people to meet. Some of Jonathan's friends are really funny, and I loved working with just this young cast, and it was wonderful. We all improved together too, and like it was just so wonderful. I love actors, and I love working with artists. So we had such a good time. But I think my favorite part of the film will be the showdown between Sienna and art, and you'll see that. And I did probably 97% of my own stunts in that. So it's my favorite, and I think people will enjoy it. I think they'll get their fix.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so incredibly stoked for you. I will definitely be there in the theater watching. And thank you so much for your time. I'm so happy to have you, on our cover. You're amazing. So I can't wait to see what you do next, really.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be on the cover, and please send me all of your upcoming projects, because I would love to hear it and just support you on your journey.
I will. Oh my gosh, thank you. That like warms my heart. It really does. So, artists supporting artists, right? We got to do it.
It's hard out there, so it's the least we can do.
Yeah.
And have a wonderful Halloween season.
Thank you. You too. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.